These were some of the darkest days of my life. Suicide was constantly on my mind. I kept a small knife in my drawer, and I would use it to cut the backs of my hands. Sometimes I would burn myself with red-hot ends of incense sticks. Looking back, I realized these actions were more than a desire to end my suffering. The pain itself became a tool. It helped me focus. It distracted me from my spiraling thoughts and anchored me in the present moment. Pain became a strange form of therapy, forcing me to live in the now. Sons, perhaps you were both popular in school, surrounded by friends, unlike me. Perhaps these words seem irrelevant to your lives as adults. But back then, I had nothing to stand on. I had no foundation. These thoughts, as dark as they were, gave me something to consider. I stopped obsessing over how out of place I felt or how to make friends and began thinking about life's greater questions. This shift in focus led me to philosophy. I started reading about nihilism and then existentialism. My first foray was Jean-Paul Sartre's Being and Nothingness. It didn't resonate with me. I found it dense and unsatisfying. But then I discovered Albert Camus. His works, The Myth of Sisyphus, The Stranger, The Plague, and The Rebel, they captivated me. Camus had a way of presenting life's absurdity and humanity's struggle for meaning that felt personal and profound. From there, I explored the writings of Arthur Schopenhauer. His reputation as a dark and pessimistic philosopher intrigued me. While I found The World as Will and Representation too verbose, his essays and aphorisms struck a chord. They were concise, insightful, and relatable. Finally, I reached Friedrich Nietzsche. When I read Thus Spoke Zarathustra, I was enthralled. Nietzsche's ideas of self-empowerment and the concept of the Übermensch, the Superman, ignited something within me. It was transformative. Nietzsche taught me that the power to define meaning lay within ourselves. We weren't bound to the meaningless void. We could transcend it. Footnote 20. Friedrich Nietzsche teaches that one must transcend the traditional limitations of humanity. His writings emphasize the importance of creating one's own values, independent of societal norms and conventions. Furthermore, he advocates for constant self-improvement, urging individuals to embrace suffering and chaos as integral parts of a fulfilling life. One of his most profound insights was the need to confront and integrate, rather than reject, the darker aspects of oneself, what he refers to as the shadow. I was deeply inspired by Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch. I aspired to become this ideal man, superior, self-evolved, and unshackled by the constraints of an ordinary existence. I embraced my shadow and my strength with utmost humility. We return. Nihilism is the belief that life and the universe have no inherent meaning. It rejects the idea that human existence holds any significance. For years, sons, I was a true nihilist. I believed wholeheartedly that nothing mattered, especially my own life. Existentialism teaches that while there is no inherent meaning in life, human beings possess the freedom to make choices and shape their own lives. Through those choices, we can create our own meaning and purpose. This concept slowly began to take root in my mind, even as I struggled to reconcile it with my deep sense of futility. I devoured books during this time, far too many to list here. Some were fascinating, others forgettable, but all contributed to my journey. I didn't have all the answers. Perhaps I still don't, but I learned to confront life's uncertainties with a mix of humility and strength. The more I contemplated the meaninglessness of life, the more I thought about death. I wasn't exactly unhappy anymore. I simply didn't care about living. Life felt dull, uninspiring, and devoid of purpose. Death, on the other hand, intrigued me. What would it be like? Was it, as I often wondered, a bridge to some next phase of existence? My curiosity kept circling back to that question. That summer, after my first year at university, I stayed in America and retreated into the wilderness, spending weeks alone with my thoughts. I would lie under the stars for hours, pondering life's mysteries and questioning why we are here. I avoided returning to the compound. I wasn't in the mood for conversations or connections. By then, I had effectively detached myself from everyone. My third semester at university yielded poor grades, and by the fourth semester, I failed all my courses. A letter was sent to my uncle in France. He summoned me home, quite furious. I hadn't been back to the compound in nearly 2 years, other than for my mother's funeral. His anger was palpable, and while I showed him the respect he expected, I felt entirely disconnected. His words didn't reach me, and I was on the verge of quitting school altogether. But then something happened that shifted my trajectory. That summer, I had my first sexual experience with none other than my cousin Eve. Eve, who I will describe more in a later chapter, was 6 years older than me and living in Spain at the time. She had returned to the compound to visit her parents, and as always, she initiated the conversation. "I see you're no longer a fat boy with pimples," she teased. "You have grown up." She wasn't wrong. My skin had cleared up, I had shed some weight, and my body had started to take shape from all those long hikes in the wilderness. We spent a lot of time together that summer, talking for hours. For the first time in years, I felt safe enough to share my thoughts and feelings with someone. Eve was patient and understanding. She listened as I opened up about my depression, my nihilistic thoughts, and my growing disinterest in life. She challenged my perspective and slowly started to pull me out of the abyss. Eve became the catalyst for my recovery. When I spoke about life's futility, she countered with optimism. Life is a gift, she would say, and it must be appreciated. She repeated it like a mantra, always insisting that our purpose was to fully experience all of the gift of life we had been given. Our purpose here, she explained, is to experience everything, good and bad. These experiences shape us, guide us, and make us who we are. I don't claim to know what happens after death, but I know this: it is your duty to live your life to the fullest. One day I asked her when she became so convinced that life was a gift. She smiled and said, "You're not the only child blessed with the wisdom of grandfather Lee's words. I spent a lot of time with him too." That struck me. If Bubba had shared these ideas with Eve, then perhaps there was something to them. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. I began to consider that maybe life wasn't inherently meaningless after all. Maybe it was my responsibility to create meaning, just as Eve had said. It was, in every sense, a beautiful summer. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Eve helped me see that there was more to life than despair and futility. Sons. Eve tragically passed away many years ago, but I have never forgotten her or the role she played in pulling me out of the depths of my darkest days. Her words, her patience, and her love left an indelible mark on my life. The ideas expressed above about being an insect, however, never left me. I know my place in the vast universe. I am a tiny speck of dust. This has never changed. However, what seemed to be a negative, depressing concept many, many years ago simply became something akin to a protective cocoon. Wrapping myself comfortably in this knowledge helped me to ground myself and to realize that we humans, we are all the same, although most of us never take the time to consider it nor to fully accept it.